So, are you on Team Human or on Team Robot? Today, we're coming full circle, connecting why enterprise software at work sucks and whether that even matters because AI is or is not taking our jobs. So, to answer these big questions and help me connect all of the dots, I have Ronnie Battista. Ronnie is a leader in the business of experience and the co founder of Rutgers University's mini masters in user experience design. He's also a wonderful mentor and leader who gave me some of the best feedback I've ever received from a boss, if you believe that I've had one in the past. I cannot wait for this conversation. But first, welcome to this week's episode of Make Sense, a video podcast that simplifies complex issues at the intersection of tech and people. There are many. So whether you're totally hyped on AI and ready for the robot takeover, or you want to crawl into a cave after deleting all of your social media accounts, I don't blame you. I'm here with my guests to help make sense of what's going on so you can design yourself into the future. My name is Lindsay. I'm a product market fit strategist, innovation consultant, and venture fundraising advisor. If you're new here, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's make sense of enterprise software, AI, and whether there's a future for us in the workforce. Ronnie, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you. It's been a long time since we worked together.
I know.
It was many, many moons ago.
12.
On that 12, yeah. It's a long time. That was a lot of fun.
144 moons to be exact.
You're good.
To start today off with a giggle, I mean, we're already laughing. Can you share the feedback that you gave me over a decade ago?
Well, you had shared it with me on a LinkedIn post, but I know distinctly it's don't think with your face.
Yeah.
And because we both have terrible poker faces, we would be in meetings and I could see you weren't happy with it. And so could anyone else within about a 4-mile radius.
Yeah. So for those of you on audio, you may want to tune in on video because the facial expressions today will be priceless.
Yeah, but now we can see, did it work? Let me see.
Well, on this podcast, I am free to make any face I want.
That's true.
Right?
It's your podcast.
But for any audience, if you want to know what I learned to do in meetings is I put a finger over my mouth as people talked as just a reminder to keep my face still. So, all right. So each episode of Make Sense starts with crystal ball. What does the future hold? And this is where I call out interesting predictions that other people made for 2023. And the experts, my guests, tell us their hot take. This week, I'm going to do something different. So we're going to play cynical or sensible, decoding the reality of technology decision making. I've been dying to discuss a book I've been reading, but I needed the right person to talk to about this. And that right person is Ronnie. The book is Team Human by Douglas Rushkoff. He is a New York Times journalist and author. And I think he has a podcast called Team Human, but this book has been enough for me as far as information. And we'll talk more about that. I feel really uncomfortable with a lot of his observations because they're mostly very true, and it pains me that they are true, but they're also quite cynical. And I need to externalize all of these feelings with a safe person. So Ronnie, you are my safe person. I'm going to read a statement and I want you to say like cynical or sensible, fact or fiction. And then if you have any comments, give it to us. And it's important at this point to say that Ronnie has not read this book. So he doesn't know any of the sentences that I...
No, this is great. It's like a quiz. This is awesome.
No, this is fun. This is like improv, right? So First sentence. I think this is an easy pitch. We must not accept any technology as the default solution for our problems.
Sensible.
Yeah, great. Our institutions and technologies are not designed to extend our human nature, but to mitigate or repress it.
Cynical.
But is it fact or fiction?
I think it's fact.
Yeah.
But I think it's cynical. I mean, and honestly, if you look at the current condition of the design community, it's fact.
Yeah, it's fact. So this is one of those sentences that like pains me to read. Our
Yeah.
institutions our technologies are not designed to extend our human nature, but to mitigate or repress it. And this is something I've been fighting about for or against my entire career. Um, and one of the reasons why I have makes sense. Okay, next one. Under the pretense of solving problems and making people's lives easier, most of our technological innovations just get people out of the way.
Sensible.
Yeah,
And it's hard to answer it that way, but yeah, I would say sensible.
and fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Enhancing one job friendly metric with a technological intervention or replacement just leaves other, likely more important values behind.
Cynical.
And fiction?
I would, it depends on the business circumstance, but you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And it's not to say that any problem you solve doesn't mean there's no other problems, but it's how you prioritize and focus on those problems. So I think that's a cynical view because it assumes that if you solve one thing, that nothing else is getting done. And I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah. This one reminds me of a project I was on where the CFO wanted more updated information about sales metrics. So he asked that a field in Salesforce would be marked required when salespeople enter their notes from their calls and visits. He did not know that most salespeople don't have that information at the time of those calls, sales calls. So rather than getting information on time, it created a situation where salespeople were keeping all of their notes in writing and then waiting till the end of the month to add everything into Salesforce for reporting. So that is an example of like wanting one metric to improve and then leaving something behind.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly reflective of the myopic nature of this leader and saying, I understand this is a thing that you need, but if you don't understand the context in which that information is gathered, produced, and distributed, then effectively either you are creating something to this end that's actually going to cause unintended consequences, or on the flip side, you can actually have people entering erroneous data to make sure that they meet that to make to meet those timelines, and then you're getting bad data. So you're either getting no data or bad data. I shouldn't say delayed data or bad data. And that is absolutely a fact that there are a lot of leaders that, again, there are a lot of non-design leaders that are interested in good and important things, but they don't have the circumspection to step back and go, okay, well, before I do that, let me know how I'm going to get that and what in getting that is going to affect the context in which these people are working. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen nearly as much as it should.
Yeah. I like to also give the audience examples of where they might experience something like this. So there are a lot of times when I have to call into a call center and I hit a wall. We all hit a wall where we're like, we're not getting the information we need, or the call center can't do the thing that we wanted to do. And I've taken a step back and asked the call center person, the rep, is there a field on your screen that even allows you to consider this thing that I'm asking as an option? Right? Like, can you even access this data that I'm asking you to look at? Can you pass that form without me giving you X?
Right.
That way I then understand, like, this person is not trying to block me from what I want. The organization and the software have been designed to do that. And this person has not been given the freedom to override that.
Well, I mean, kudos to you for actually doing something that I'm guessing the rest of the organization did, which is actually, how about talk to the people that are on the ground actually solving those problems,
Exactly.
finding out what they need and want, and quite frankly, whether even any of the solution is going to enable them, empower them to provide a better customer experience.
Right.
Starting there, and the fact that you're doing that is, I'd love to say, should be like radical common sense, but the fact is you're doing that, and a lot of companies aren't. They're relying on that technology. It's a really good, it was very expensive, it's really popular, and everybody else is using it. So if it's enterprise software that's for X, then of course it should work for us, not recognizing that these things are built generically to be able to do everything for everyone, and not actually taking the time to say, how does this actually apply to my business? What do I need and not need? That exercise tends to lose a lot of steam once they decide they're going with X platform, and then it becomes, let's just screw that platform in.
Yeah. So you can see here where we're building up to why enterprise software sucks in the next segment. But I have one more that is going to just reinforce what we've been talking about. While machines may get certain things done faster and more efficiently than humans, they externalize a host of other problems that most technologists pretend do not exist.
That's fact. And that's sensible.
And it's sensible. So
Yeah.
whether the problem is externalized for the enterprise to solve themselves or externalized outside of the enterprise for some other company to solve, yes, there are trade-offs in every solution, but many times because we're not taking the time to really understand the people that use the solutions we're delivering, there ends up being a lot of other problems that get externalized.
100%.
Reminds me of another Fortune 50 company that I did work for, where they wanted to replace their digital asset management system. Now, they had already replaced their digital asset management system just 2 years prior, but the new CTO felt like they weren't getting enough value out of the existing one, and his buddy probably worked for a new one, and he wanted to bring this new DAM in. DAM is digital asset management.
I was just going to say, when you said that, I was like, damn, we're going to talk.
DAM in. So they went and spent like $500,000 on some, consulting companies start collecting requirements for what the new one needed to do. But they had the sense to hire a boutique consulting firm who then hired me to talk to 30 employees in different business units around the world, but mostly in the US, about their experience with the existing system. And it turns out that this existing system was rolled out 2 years ago. One, there was no training. So most of the people, particularly in like Latin America, had just gotten a login from their American counterparts, but were never taught how to use it, right? And on top of that, there were people that I talked to, Americans, that had spent the past year literally moving digital assets from the old system to the new system. And they said they would quit their jobs if the CTO rolled out a new system, if they had to do this again. Yep. And the solution, and this goes back to the first sentence, we must not accept any technology as the default solution to our problems, is that there was one business unit that had the budget to pay someone to train their employees and be available once or twice a month for like intro to this digital asset management system kind of workshop. And they were getting some great value out of it. So this company already spent $500,000 when they probably could have just hired someone for $75,000 to deliver training full time and support the use of this digital asset management system.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing, and I'm sure for any listeners, design or otherwise, the amount of still examples of where a company makes a big bet on a big platform, on a big thing, and spends so much time, effort, and love and care in trying to bring this thing to life with no real plans of communicating during the process, engaging employees or customers, whoever the affected during that process, and quite frankly, once it actually comes out, is truly making sure that people understand it and can adopt it. And that's actually one of my areas of focus kind of moving forward, is the long tail on things, because there's a lot of work that's done in the design space, certainly in the front end discovery, where you're getting big whiteboards of things and here's how we're going to do this, and it never lives beyond. People leave with like that sort of workshop high of like, that was awesome, and then Monday rolls around and they're kind of back to the thing. So when it comes to the actual launch of a product, that is absolutely the time where you need very hands-on kinetic learning, going through it, giving people the opportunity to really figure out what it is. Because even as I always say, is like, you can have the best enterprise package delivered on time and on budget, and every single business requirement, use case, user story, it is chef's kiss,
Right.
on paper. But the spirit of it, it doesn't matter whether the company did it themselves or hired a consulting company. All that's done, and after the drinks from the post-launch party, when you flick that switch, it doesn't matter what the consulting company said. Doesn't matter what the company themselves think about it. The true impact of that, you will know, because it is now out of your hands. The only people that can actually truly tell you what the value of that was, are they using it? And are they using it correctly? And are you seeing any of the business driving results that way, way back when they sold you was going to happen because of this? And it is 2023 as we record this, and I remain flummoxed that in 20 plus years of doing this, the same rules apply. Is that focus on technology and on enterprise software, because it's big, because it has so many crazy moving parts, that there is and needs to be a strong focus on how does this actually get this in there.
Yeah.
And slow but sure, if they even do talk to customers at the beginning, slow but sure, it just becomes about, there's a launch date, we've got to get this stuff out. And then again, they flick the switch and they're like, okay, it's live now, we did it, and spray and pray.
Yeah.
And it's so unfortunate.
I can tell in your voice that you feel my pain. My first consulting project I worked on full-time in 2007, I went to the manager to get requirements for this interface that we were going to build on top of a document management system. And I was like, this is all really great. Can I talk to some of your employees? Because they're the ones that will be using this software. And he said, no, that's not necessary. They'll use it because it's their job.
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting point. That's 2007.
And
it's
it's
2007.
2023, and people still feel like that. I mean, this year with all the like CEOs that have tried to bring everyone back into the office, and we're like, they'll come back into the office because they're lucky that they have a job. It's like, nope, right? Like, people are still acting that like taking that form of leadership, and it's 15 years later, and
well,
it's not working. Yeah.
Let's address something here that's quite the elephant in the room, and that is, in an economy like this, certainly in the I would say the white collar service economy, like that is the issue. When you're going again back to 2007, when I'll never forget, I was speaking at a university in Russia, and I was talking about employee experience, and this is through an interpreter, so it was kind of funny how the process went. But like I said, look, employees, like they are your front line in many ways. The employees that service your frontline service to customers, like they need to be empowered, they need to feel good, and they're like, no, they don't. And they were, I mean, and certainly and very culturally, like they're just very abrupt. They're like, no, I don't think so. And I said, well, I said, what does it cost to replace an employee here? like, because in the US, it's anywhere between, depending on the company, $20 to $35,000, right? Because you got to
More,
recruit.
higher. It can
Right. Well,
be like 70 to
yeah,
150, depending
you
on.
got to recruit them. You got to do all this stuff. I'm like, so when you leave, if this person leaves, then, and the answer was they don't leave. They're happy they have a job. Like, we don't have to care. This line between, and this comes from enterprise software. And I'm going back, I'm dating myself, but like the fact is back in the days, you were a worker and you were human, and we didn't have social media, right? So when you went to work and there was a green screen emulator that was really hard to use, that's your job, right?
Mhm.
But as we became used to using digital products and seeing how easy it is to buy one thing by clicking a button, we start to expect that same level of digital accuracy, that
Experience. Yeah.
experience in our work life. And the companies born digital, right, that knew that, the Airbnbs of the world, the Ubers of the world, that really started saying, like, we don't have a big legacy thing, we're just going to get started to do this. They're attracting the top talent. They're attracting a generation that knows no other. We accepted the fact that we had to use garbage in enterprise systems, but the fact is that they don't. And so the B2B experience versus the B2C experience, there really is, the line between them is, an employee interface versus a customer interface. It's an interface because
Yeah.
that same person is a customer and expects that same level of, like I said, digital maturity.
Yep. Quality of service from touch point to touch point. So
Mm-hmm.
we kind of already moved into our next segment, which is called the deep dive. So we're there. In this segment, we get into the details about a
Let's
specific
do it.
technology's implications for everyday people. So today we're talking about enterprise software systems and the role they play in the employee experience. So we already got there. That's why I queued up these statements. There's going to be another section of statements that I'm going to get to from this book, but I just want to continue the conversation a little bit more. So Ronnie, you took the words out of my mouth. You and I have always understood that a company must treat their employees the way they want their employees to treat their customers. Right. So why does enterprise software at work suck? Like,
Just full out. I don't think that it natively, like, it just sucks because it's enterprise software. It sucks because it is not, it is usually driven by the IT leadership in an organization. And with full credit, that's their job, is to sort of put that in there. But when you have IT departments, again, that just always follow the money. If my responsibility is to introduce a new system, a new feature, a new enterprise software, and I am at the end of the year, did I get it in on time? Did I do that? Is follow the money and follow what's incentivized. Now, if you told that same CIO, you can buy whatever enterprise software you want, the business result we want at the end of this, and you have X million to do it, right? And at the end of this, 6 months after launch, this is the business result. Not that it got in and it actually works, but if we're not seeing this business result, you fail. Show me how many businesses hold enterprise, whether it's IT or not, enterprise software installations accountable for the business results. They don't.
right.
And unless and until there is something that is tied to the customer satisfaction or the employee satisfaction that comes from using that, then I am not, as the IT, I am not incented. You're paying me to put a big system in. That's a lot of work, Lindsay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work without talking to people. I got to get so many different departments. I'm busy, right? And that's what you're paying me for. So unless and until you're telling me I need to think about something else, that's my job. You and somebody else can figure out the rest of it. But I did my piece, and that's why I'm getting paid for it.
Yep. So I also like, again, using examples that people can relate to. We all know, you go to the doctor these days and your doctors are staring at a computer the entire time. I've had episodes on Make Sense where I've talked about this, but, health insurance companies mandate that hospital systems need to use electronic medical records. So these health systems spend like 70, $80 million deploying electronic medical record system in the 2000s, early 2010s. None of the doctors and people are really consulted, right? And now we have doctors who spend 4 to 5 hours a day sitting at computers instead of providing service to their patients, right? So that is a direct example of employee experience. Their enterprise software sucks, so then the customer experience sucks too,
Yeah.
right? Um, in the previous segment, if we believe that each new technological intervention is designed to get people out of the way or leaves important human values behind and inadvertently externalizes a host of other problems, like these are kind of, I guess, the theoretical explanation of enterprise software sucking, right? Why it sucks is because we make decisions like this. You're explaining that the incentives inside the organization are not set up correctly. I like to also think about the ego and how a lot of people just believe they are the user. So that IT guy sitting down to write the requirements or draw out the interface, he's making those choices based on his psyche because he believes he's the user, right?
Know thy user, thou art not thy user
Yeah.
is a maxim that has not changed since I've started doing this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, keep going.
There's you really tripped up an observation that I've had, and I do think this applies to enterprise software as well, is that humans have a very good job of engineering themselves into roles. If you look at anything, no matter what your position is on government, like, if you look at the USDA and the FDA, like, one has the authority to certify a cheese pizza, but if it's got sausage on it, it goes to another department. Like, this is true, the amount of like engineering that we do to keep people employed, right? And again, government's an easy target, right? Because there's a lot of departments or whatever. But I would argue that, and this is where the AI thing comes in really interesting, is that we as humans and as organizations have found ways to create entire cottage industries that heretofore didn't exist, or didn't exist in the capacity that they do now. Let me give you my favorite is vendor management organizations. Okay, so coming from the consulting field, when we used to work with a large client, we'd go and talk to the person at that client and we'd sign a contract and go, and then they're like, okay, we got this vendor management platform. So like to ostensibly make it easy and fair and take that off, the vendor management, the vendor management complex, as I'm calling it, every year, the same thing. We would do the same types of projects every year. They added another step because they added another thing and another approval layer. Every time they're doing this, they're doing two things. One is they're obviously truly cutting down on the ability to deliver at speed on time. But the other thing is they're creating jobs and they're creating opportunities and things. So part of this as humans is we need to find ways to keep ourselves busy. And if you are a vendor management organization, it is highly in your interest to add another layer of this, because that means that now we can do more and I need another person to monitor that piece. And then you look at any of these enterprise platforms and guess what they offer? Certifications. I got certified in this and I got certified in that. And what they're doing is creating effectively industries and complete things surrounding their product to create jobs, to create gravitas and bona fides, and it keeps them in the business. And some of them, like I said, when they're even charging for this, when they're charging to say, Lindsay, I want you to be the best, and I won't name any brands, but I want you to be the best certified enterprise architect, right? So now you can go and take our little online courses and post them on LinkedIn that you're now, or you can take our $3,500 master course and come in and go do that. By the way, ostensibly, not even ostensibly, overtly, to basically put our stuff into production. But by you doing that, now you become more important than another developer because you have this. Mm-hmm. And this is human nature. This is what we do. Yeah. And so AI, I think, is going to be really, in particular, the first proper disintermediation of technology within the design community. Whether it's, again, mood boards are gone now. Mood boards are a prompt. Like, that's an entire again, element that doesn't exist anymore. But things like you go to knowledge management. If we can basically take all of the Home Depot dumped on the floor documentation and organization now, as opposed to having, Mary and Joe who are going through and like trying to talk to each department, you feed it through a large language model, have it hypertag itself and kind of redo it. Like that can happen. But there are entire knowledge management organizations out there, and there are accountants out there, and there are paralegals out there, and there are designers out there, and there are prototypers out there that are like, okay, that's great, but what does it mean for me? So what you're going to see is, as we've seen with SAG-AFTRA, which are literally now defining what can be AI and not AI, there are going to be ways where, to the point in that book, where people are going to find a way to say, well, AI can't do this. The jobs that will exist are jobs that are purely saying that AI cannot literally, and if it is taking a piece of paper and walking across a room, there'll be a job for that because AI can't physically do that. But that is the environment which we find ourselves in, is this constant reinvention and saying, how do we take technology, not just use it for better productivity for companies, but how do we take technology and create new industries in support of that technology?
I knew I invited the right person to have this conversation.
I don't know what's going to happen, but it's really interesting to watch. And I'm waiting for that first shoe to drop to see what happens.
So I want to cover just one thing that's kind of been, before we jump into the AI segment. There's an economic indicator that the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, whatever, puts out. We all hear about like the unemployment rate or the number of new jobs, but there's one called like labor productivity. Okay. And labor productivity has only increased over the past decade by 0.8% year over year. Now, after World War II through the early 2000s, that was at 2.1%. Okay, so labor productivity in our economy is very stagnant. Okay, that's and a lot of economists talk about that. I want to explain that productivity stagnation by saying, because companies believe, and let me back up. That stagnation is happening despite all of our technological innovation over the past 20 years, right? So productivity is not increasing, even though we have like mind-blowingly new technology, right? So because companies want to believe some software system is the solution to their problem without really considering the people problem part of the problem, they acquire this new software for efficiency gains. And they're like, oh, we can lay off 5% of our headcount because we have this new software. Headcount is looked as the easiest thing to slash in an operational budget. But then the technology, because the company isn't incentivized correctly, the technology they acquired rarely achieves the desired efficiency gains, right? So we have to then hire people back, right, to address all of the new problems this technology system externalized. So that explains why the productivity is actually not changing, right?
That's one. I mean, it's certainly one of many reasons why, but yeah.
So when we now get into the next conversation that I'm going to queue up, and we talk about, will AI take our jobs and will we all be jobless? I am like, that sounds like a unfulfilled promise for decades, when the personal computer was introduced and they said the personal computer was going to take all of our jobs and we weren't going to have to work anymore, right? So like when people say they're afraid that all these people are going to lose their jobs, I'm like, no, because we'll get the enterprise software system back into the company. The company will realize they're not getting the efficiency gains they expected, and they're going to have to whole new host of problems, hire new people. So like net new jobs, like the net job count won't actually change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd have to go back and search on the article, but one of the things that, it very similar was they used to talk about like housework and how much time it used to be to like have to wash the floors with your hands and, and a
Oh,
washboard. And
laundry
then,
was the single
and then,
most like
right.
invention that saved people time. Yeah.
It did save people time, but ultimately, when you look in aggregate, housework has not gone down any more than it has when there was nothing.
Right.
So, yes, maybe it's easier to wash, but then you've got this and the vacuum. So, ultimately, it didn't actually change the context in terms of timing, but it added a lot of new technology to make it quote unquote easier. But the time really wasn't all that, as effective. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the most, I guess, the piece that I'm still trying to figure out is where where do we continue to advocate for trust? Because this is the piece in terms of what humans will do in whatever, again, I don't know, we're in the AI space here, but like whatever those roles are, I think one of the primary things that we are going to need as a society, as a planet, is to make sure that as we continue to cede some of these maybe more manual or labor data intensive things to computers, that we are continuing to remain vigilant around instilling trust, because trust is everything. Your currency. The reason that you can get a piece of paper and you can get a hot dog with it is because there's trust that means something. The reason that you stop at a red light is because we are in a agreed society. But if you look where we are now, forget about the news, the fake news. Now you've got AI with deep fakes. You can literally now have an entire interview where somebody can say, none of that actually, like caught on tape, didn't happen, right? So trust, when trust breaks down, like the implications for that and the threat of AI is particularly hard in that trust space. And as designers and people that are in the experience business, as opposed to, I think what we need to focus on as we tackle AI isn't like, is it easier to use? Is it, can we make sure that people trust that this product, this service, whatever this is, that this is backed by actual integrity and truth? Because at this point, it is becoming such a,
It's tenuous
and that
right
is,
now.
I am more worried about trust than anything else, because once trust goes, literally, once somebody doesn't believe in the power of a dollar or the power of what a president says on a call, or what, then I'm not saying it's going to devolve to anarchy, but that then becomes the decisions people make, where they go to find out, like it all gets thrown up to question. Designers created, as we all have created the atomistic human experience of your experience on Facebook versus mine, because you get all the things you like, you don't hear, and I get all the things I like. So we created a perfect human experience for one person. We did that right. What we didn't account for in that is by creating that, we are actually, the trust level has deteriorated from doing that. So we need to make a huge pivot in this AI space to effectively get back and get that in to companies and brands that can be trusted. And that's going to require, in my opinion, at least for the next 15 to 20 years, human beings to do that.
Again, I knew I invited the right person to have this conversation.
I don't know if I'm saying, I mean,
I don't even have anything to say back to it, because I agree with you. I am gonna resist going down the trust corridor, in order to get to our final segment. Okay.
Let's do it.
So in our final segment, we're coming back full circle, back to cynical or sensible, decoding the reality of technology decision-making. So these are, again, statements from Team Human. So I want you to say cynical or sensible, fact or fiction. If you have any comments, we'll go through them. Okay, so we got
Sounds good.
A handful more. Okay, the first one is a prediction I've talked about with a bunch of people on Make Sense. It should be straightforward. Artificial intelligence will not immediately replace you. A person using it will.
Sensible.
Yes. The readiness with which we accept the notion of our own obsolescence says a lot about how much we value ourselves.
Wow. Cynical. That's
But
kind of
it's
cynical.
kind of true, though, right?
It is. It is. It's a cynical. It's a cynical fact.
Okay. Yeah. Where humans remain valuable, and I'm going to say still, is in training their replacements.
Sensible fact.
Okay. Workers are hardly aware of the way digital surveillance technologies are used to teach their jobs to algorithms.
I would say that is cynical fiction.
Okay. All right.
I don't believe that anybody, at least that's paying attention to anything here, doesn't have some awareness. If, like I said, if you're a paralegal at this point, and you know that by typing in this information, not only can you get all of the best case law in the world, but you can actually have a brief written up, and you don't realize that. I think you're probably doing that at your own peril.
Okay. But what about, the doctor that's putting in patient notes, and eventually those patient notes might be used to train AI to do diagnoses?
Yeah, well, that's already happening, but
Yeah.
all research is being fed in. I think that there are certain professions, I would say, outside of the sort of service IT economy that, and again, regardless of that, the fact is unless and until there's a robot doctor, which I don't see coming anytime soon.
No, neither do I.
Once again, as they know, that's one, like I said, be a welder, right? Have a craft, be a plumber. You can be, there are certainly even physical jobs, warehouse jobs that can be replaced by robotics, etc. But there are certain things like you need to, as a welder, train on your left hand because there's certain things you have to get. So there are certain jobs that will not be replaced by humans, and certainly healthcare in terms of doctor provision. While one day it might be a little Star Trekky, it's going to be a long time before you don't have to go to an actual doctor.
100%. 100%. I also think this statement gives some of our enterprise software systems too much credit. Like a lot of them are just simple like databases that are collecting data, and a lot of companies are sitting on a lot of data that they don't even know how to process to turn into insights. So on the other angle of this is like that all technologies are just taking your data to train an algorithm is also kind of overblowing it too, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Indeed.
All right. AI systems make decisions just as racist and prejudicial as the humans whose decisions they were fed.
Sensible and fact.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the kind of connect the dots from previous Make Sense episodes I did was I had a leader, a startup founder in the LGBTQ space in healthcare, tell a story about how she went in for neck pain at Jefferson University Hospital, and she looked back at her patient notes a year later, and the doctor had made some comment about her being like transvestitism, which like is just the idea of being sexually aroused, dressing like the opposite sex. And this had nothing to do with her neck pain, right? So now we take these patient notes and train an AI algorithm to do diagnoses. And all of a sudden, the next orthopedic or, is like getting some AI, suggestions, and it starts talking about what the person's sexual preferences are, and it has nothing to do with it. So yes, there's like this data in the systems that can be used to train our replacements, but that data is racist and prejudicial because humans are, and AI is going to be that too, if we're not paying
Yeah, I
attention.
mean, I think that is, and I'll absolutely say I am certainly not an expert on what what AI jobs will exist in the future. But what I can tell you with no hesitation is that the the full no holds barred aggregate feeding of large language models means we've taken like every bit of truth and garbage in the world and thrown it in one place. And because of the continued diversity of opinion out there, you are seeing that. And there's a great video about Barbies from around the world or whatnot, where they show that, like, even when you ask for Dali to render a CEO picture, that it's going to be, a white male at X age, and so effectively it becomes an amplification of the same types of things, and it keeps learning as we go on. To me, what I see, there will be a role in terms of trust and ethics for where trust is going to be placed in large language models. Where this one, for example, we created in my previous job was just launching an accessibility advocate, which was it was a digital human, but effectively a large language model that was only trained on 200, almost 300 sources that were peer reviewed about sight, hearing, cognitive, and physical disabilities. So nothing in there was, it was all stuff that is considered truth. Now that we put in a lockbox and say anything that goes in to feed, her name was Maya, this digital advocate, is going to be based on truth-based data. At this point, OpenAI and all these things out there, to me, it's
Well,
it
and
is yeah.
this is a conversation around copyright, and why OpenAI is being sued is because we don't know. We do know that they were trained on shadow libraries. We don't get to see citations in a
Yep.
lot of our interactions with the stuff that OpenAI via ChatGPT might deliver you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a really exciting. I mean, there's even now ways that some designers and artists are embedding things in their drawings that make them illegible from from these models. So, this is the interesting arms race that always
Watermark.
happens with something. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, all right. Many companies couldn't ascertain their own AI's criteria anyway.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. I mean, what the point means. So maybe can you give me like? I'm not sure exactly what you're saying. What it's saying.
I kind of read this to say that, we know that decision. So, like, they can't tell us how their AI is deciding to like give
Oh,
us answers.
yeah. I mean, I would say that the level of true understanding of how AI works is still in its very, very infant stage. So unless you are truly the one that is, doing programming and whatnot in there, and you're just the business leader, like I think not that they think it's magic, but I think they just make assumptions and general ideas about what they've seen. But I don't think people really know exactly what goes into and why and how a large language model or an image generator actually works.
Yeah.
But it just does.
I kind of, when I read this one, I was like, yeah, well, duh. There's, again, Fortune 500 financial institutions who are sitting on some cobalt system in the Philippines that was built in the 1970s, and they haven't fixed it or changed it because they don't know what it does and what would happen if they were to like move away from it, right? So knowing that about big companies, I'm like, well, of course they probably don't know what their like AI stuff is doing that they're deploying, or like how it actually works, or how it's been trained to make decisions.
I do think that's a great point. And I do think it's going to be really interesting because if you look at, and again, I worked at companies in the past where, without naming names, I mean, this was a company that produced something that literally the entire world uses. And the way it was done was from systems that were built in the 70s and 80s, and it was such a patchwork. It worked, but literally like it was like, you know, gaffer tape keeping the whole thing together. And their only way, like many years ago, was like, well, we can buy a new system, we could do all this. But with AI now, I think companies are going to be put in the position where the farther more legacy they are, they now have an opportunity to truly be able to, I think, make more of those larger digital transformation leaps from a cost perspective than effectively they were in the past. I think that, I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I do believe that the companies, organizations, and software that enables legacy porting and that like that is going to be a field in and of itself, to say, in lieu of, you know, having to get everything offline, this is going to be a 5-year transformation, that we can get this down to 18 months because we're going to use X, Y, and Z. I feel like that is absolutely an area ripe for someone to jump in. And once you do that, you're going to own the world.
My heart is a flutter because I have been hoping for that for so long. Back in 11 years ago, I went to Haiti volunteering with Engineers Without Borders. And I walked away after a few days being there, being like, well, if this island ever wanted to have, you know, real plumbing, you'd have to literally airlift everyone off the island and put in plumbing, because it's just too much of a mess to like piecemeal it, right?
Yep.
And that's how I feel about many enterprise software systems, and especially the one that I'm passionate about, because I had to do a project on health insurance claims processing, is that that's a big problem in our country's debate in the insurance world, like with health insurance, is all the bureaucracy is because they haven't updated their technology systems for 40, 50 years. And it's a freaking mess. And they'd have to airlift the whole company off of the systems to rebuild it, similar to what they'd have to do in Haiti.
Yeah, I don't even want to start with just working between my FSA and my primary provider. In the last 3 weeks have been 8 hours of calls with tickets and whatnot. And yeah, it's still a hot mess. And it's funny, you mentioned about like EMRs, like so many moons ago, like that was like the Y2K thing. Like whoever owns the EMR platform and stuff, like, is going to rule the world. And once again, where are we? It's no better. But we've added bloat. We've added people in roles. If you look at insurance companies alone, and my friend's a doctor, and the amount of people he has to employ just to talk to them, and the processes they add in, again, these are ways that human beings design ways to provide meaning and value to what they do every day. And if that meaning and value gets them a paycheck, but comes at the expense of efficient and safe and effective healthcare for you, that's the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
That's cynical, by the way. That would be a cynical thing, but it's a bit of a reality. Like I said, there's just too much that I've seen in 25 years of getting software, getting enterprise solutions out there, that we've added. Jira, right? Great. Jira is awesome. But you know how much time is now spent in just documenting how about just code it and get it out there? But we add, you know, agile sprints and ceremonies. Yeah. And again, I think there's effective natures to that, but ultimately we focus more on the process than we do on, are we really getting good software out there?
Right.
And are we getting it out there efficiently?
So, last one to bring it home. If we are truly on the brink of a jobless future, we should be celebrating our efficiency and discussing alternative strategies for distributing our surplus, from a global welfare program to universal basic income.
Sensible fiction.
Okay.
I mean, look, a universal income, and effectively when AI can have it that literally every company only needs a CEO, yeah, because you can literally have the entire other company, then that's great. But, you know, I don't know, this idea that we're going to live in this bucolic society where we're going to get paychecks every month and machines are going to be outside mowing the lawn, that's, I would just argue, coming from a position of privilege, because that costs a lot of money,
Yeah.
right? Just to get the copper, you need 12 kilograms of copper per person to have a GDP that's actually considered first. Like, you can do that. Much as you can say, oh, we should all go organic. That's fantastic. Organic farming, you can feed 4 billion people. So yes, we can do that. We just got to get rid of the rest because we do not have the arable land to be able to sustain as many people as we have on the planet. So yes, that could work for a nice smaller part of the population, the one that gets on the spaceship that gets to leave Earth in every dystopian novel you see. But that is not going to work for all of humanity. Yeah. That's not going to work for 8 billion people.
I think the concern is that, machines, or if the AI robot takeover happens and lots of people lose their jobs, the way American society is set up is we kind of punish people that don't find utility in the economy, right? Like if they can't find a job or value, and so we punish them, they become poor, they need welfare or whatever. If we're working towards this jobless future, we should be thinking also about how we're going to take care of ourselves rather than punishing the people that get lost in the mix.
Yeah, and I would just, my final piece to add to that is when we talk about, and I count you as a colleague in the same thing, when we say we, that's service knowledge workers.
Yeah.
Like the plumber's still going to be coming to your house. You still need to go to the grocery store. So the fact is this rich session that we're going through, this is actually, if anything, what we're actually getting to is a point where the roles that pay, the middle management roles, 3 layers down in a pharma company, they won't be needed anymore. So we need to think about that person. But I think there's a whole lot more people in this country and around the world that AI is going to do really, nothing to in terms of their daily life, unless and until like diagnostic tools that a plumber would use, maybe, but you're still going to need somebody to get the crap out of that toilet. And that's, computers will not be doing that for any time soon.
You're right. Like, you're right.
It's about, and this is the hubris that I think we struggle with. And I am certainly going through it, is like, I do important things, but all the things that I do are things that require my brain and not my hands and my actual physical talents. And my brain right now is being replaced by a technology that can take everything that I've ever learned, never forget a bit of it, take everything you ever learned, put that together, and now it can even code for itself to correct itself. So it's us that's going to be affected by that. Again, not anybody, I shouldn't say not most of the world, but we certainly have quite a tsunami coming in terms of how we make a living moving forward.
Yes, all of the above. I think we talked plenty in this episode about why a jobless future, like a completely jobless future, is a myth. Right? One, we've got blue collar jobs that require your hands, that those people, they're going to still have jobs, right? Then when we look at the white collar jobs, service-based jobs, somehow we keep solving one problem, externalizing another, and creating new jobs for new people to manage some bit of information, Ronnie, as you have explained plenty of times. So, and it's also how I phrased it as well. You might install a new system and lay off some people, but when that new system doesn't live up to your goals, you need to hire more people to like get the charts to go up into the right. So let's make it make sense. Enterprise software generally sucks because people look at technology as a solution without considering the human part of it, right? AI is going to take over some jobs, for sure, but there will still be more jobs left.
And like I said, there'll be new jobs. I mean, we're
And there'll
already
be new
seeing
jobs.
prompt engineer. There will be new things that come out of this. Let's see how this dates. I don't know that it's going to be as prolific as when the computer came out and you needed people that fixed computers
Yeah.
and configured computers. I think that this type of technology and the type of problems that it solves for really, I think is, I won't say unprecedented, but it is an order of magnitude different. So while I do think there will be new cottage industries and new things to kind of address this, as I look at the numbers of people that could be affected by this field, I'm still struggling to see how many jobs can come from that. There will be, but I just don't know how many there'll be.
Yeah. So I think
And hopefully we'll have them.
Ronnie, you did a good job making it all make sense. So thank you for listening to Make Sense with us. Your host, Lindsay Tavis, and my guest, Ronnie Battista. We hope you enjoyed our take on enterprise software, technology as a solution or a problem, and AI. Ronnie, where can people find you online? Do you want them to find you online?
I am currently working on revamping a website, but LinkedIn is really where I do most of my activity. So I would love to connect with folks on LinkedIn. Certainly, if they listen, if they're a friend of you, they're a friend of me.
Awesome. As always, for those of you listening, you can check out all the links and resources in the show notes. I am, just to tee it up, preparing a book on artificial intelligence, which rounds up all of these conversations I've been having on Make Sense. Be like, here, let me catch you up, volume 1, AI from many angles. So final note, if you want to continue to be the smartest person in the room, make sure you're getting notified when each episode hits on YouTube. Hit subscribe for next week's episode or follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Ronnie, for joining me.
Oh, you're most welcome. Great talking to you as always.